Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show with my celebrity host. You guys know the name by now. The Jessica Javins talk herself. Jessica Javins in the house. What's up, Jess?
Hey, I am so happy to be here back. You know what? This is the third time, Drew, that I come and Andre to Indianapolis this year. I've never thought that would be possible, but it was part of my vision, you know? Two things. That I would travel more this year and that I would have my own show. And here I am.
And look at that, man. It's happening. I love that.
So, Jessica, you're here to wrap up season 2 and you got bigger dreams for season 3. What's season 3 going to be like for you?
Oh, we're just starting to unveil all of that. And you were part of that brainstorming a little bit. I'm just so excited because the creativity now at this point is just so coming and it's just so all over that I am more excited than ever before. We're gonna go. I'm not gonna give you too much right now because then it's not gonna be the huge thing I want it to be. So
I don't even know what it's gonna be.
No, you will, but not broadcasting yet. But we will.
Okay. So what's been so exciting about closing out season 2 for you?
I think it's the combination of people that I've met, the amount of learning every time on how to ask better questions because it's all about the quality of the questions, right? And the amount of connection that I have and the support here in Indianapolis, for example, it's a burst of entrepreneurship and artists and people supporting each other. I was like, this is incredible. Yeah. So, and every time I come back, I meet some of them. We're like supporting each other no matter where we are in the world. So the energy is just like amazing. Hot. I love it.
Then you met somebody yesterday that was part of the mob.
Yeah.
Witness protection program.
Oh, you're talking about Chris?
Yeah. Chris
my
Williams.
gosh. I took a break. I went because we're in a hotel, the Sheraton, and I went to the bar to get something to eat. And all of a sudden I started talking to this person. I said, you need to meet Andre. We came in the studio and now this whole thing is starting with him and 2 other policemen, all from Canada. And they're like deep into criminal, like serious stuff. And now they're doing their own show. Like in less than 24 hours, we're making it happen.
Yeah, you're just a wave of Florida energy here. Now let's get down with today's show. You did say something about every time you come here, you meet exciting guests, extraordinary people, and I'm not gonna let you down. I'm gonna do it again.
Yep.
Because this guy is definitely Mr. Comedy himself. He was just here at the at Helium, making people laugh. And without further ado, let's welcome him to the Andre the Beast Creighton Show, the one, the only. Drew Davis. What's up, Drew?
Hey, what's up, Andre and Jessica? Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm very excited to be on your all show. I'm a little intimidated. In addition to Jessica's star power, Andre the Beast. That's such a tough, manly, conquered type name. I'm just Drew. I'm just here. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you decided to show up. You know what? Let's get right down before we get into your comedy and tell the viewers a little bit about Drew. Who is Drew?
All right. Well, Drew's just a guy. Drew's a guy that does stand-up comedy, I have a podcast and I started a group that produces clean comedy shows based out of Nashville, but we're kind of nationwide now, in a network of a lot of comedians. But before I was a comedian, I was a youth pastor for 15 years. That was a big part of my life. Now, I just really like, making people laugh and entertaining. When I'm not doing comedy, I'm remarkably average. I love movies or playing video games or just hanging out. I'm a big fan of eating. I love hanging out with friends and eating places. That's like the more I talk about me, the more you're like, let's go back to the comedy. Like,
so Drew, were you're in Nashville? Is that where you was born and raised in Nashville?
Yeah, so I grew up in a suburb around Nashville called Brentwood, Tennessee. And then in more of my adult life, it's been more of the Nashville or around the areas of Nashville. And I've moved around a little bit, but I always kind of seem to come back to Nashville. So like I went to East Tennessee for college, went to West Tennessee for a few years to work, even spent some time in Kentucky for a little bit. But all roads for me seem to lead back to Nashville, which I'm kind of okay with. It feels like home,
Yeah. And when you think about Nashville, you think about the Grand Ole Opry. The first thing you think about is Dolly Parton and Dollywood and me myself. I like Chattanooga. I like going up Lookout Mountain.
I love Chattanooga
and really Ruby Falls. Just really, Tennessee is an adventurous town. But let's talk about. We know they're known for music.
Nashville, yeah.
What about comedy? How has the comedy scene been there for you? And has it been a difficult struggle for you because it's so empowered with the sound of music there that it seemed like that you never hear anything about the entertainment side like what you're dealing with? Has that been a struggle for you since you've been there?
Yeah, so especially when I first started, comedy was definitely not something you heard about a lot in Nashville. So I've been doing it about somewhere between 12 and 14 years. And when I first started, it was definitely like very indie scenes. We have one big comedy club, Zany's Comedy Club, which is the biggest in the South. And so people, if you performed at Zany's, they might know you, but the whole rest of the comedy world kind of in Nashville was a little bit unknown. But in the past 5 to 10 years, we've actually had several bigger names move to Nashville and kind of, still tour and do their thing, but kind of be based out of Nashville and put on more shows through Zany's or through the Grand Ole Opry. And so that's kind of really helped comedy get a better reputation in Nashville. I wouldn't say we're like, still when people think of Nashville, they still think of Music City. But, Nate Bargatze's blown up huge in the past few years. And he's started a production company, Nate Land, here in Nashville, and that's really kind of put more eyes on Nashville. We have other comedians like Dusty Slay and Leanne Morgan and Aaron Weber. There's just bigger names, or John Christ, or people that seem to move to Nashville but kind of still work, and that's actually helped us out a lot with. So I've noticed a difference since I started in the past five or so years. More people know about comedy in Nashville. I wouldn't say it's like I run a lot of independent shows, and it's still a hassle to like remind people like, oh yeah, we have comedy here.
Right.
But it's as far as a lot of people down in Tennessee, when they'll gravitate towards Nashville for comedy, like other comedians, because they realize like if you're gonna try to build something of a career in comedy, down south, you don't really have a lot of options as like big comedy places. You have Atlanta, and then Nashville's becoming on that list as well, which is kind of cool. So
and don't forget, Indianapolis is on that list. I mean, we have.
Of course. Well, is Indiana and Indianapolis South? I was wondering that when I was in there. Are you guys still considered Southerners? I didn't want to like offend anyone by calling them a Southerner.
We're considered the heart of the Midwest.
Okay, so you're mid. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah,
we're the heart of the Midwest. I mean, like a lot of famous comedians have graced this city with their presence, starting at Crackers Comedy Club, and now with the new Helium, they're also it's the new place to be for comedians such as D.L. Hughley, like I was sharing with you that and when you. And this is what I really think about it now that I'm looking at the comedy world. You really don't need a big auditorium to do what you do, because you can do multiple shows and they usually sell out.
Yeah. And even sometimes there's something special about those smaller rooms. On one hand, you don't have to, if you sell a 30 to 50 person room and then, it's an intimate setting, it's a lot of fun. And if you do a bunch of those shows, and that's a good look. So
I don't want to leave Florida out of this because I flew from there. We have to talk about South Florida. For me, South Florida is a big comedy place. I've been to so many theaters, at least 5 of them, and watched comedy shows. From the big, huge Hollywood Hard Rock Cafe. I went last year, watched Seinfeld from way up top. And you're right. When I went to the smaller rooms in the Hard Rock, they have it too. It was a completely different dynamic. Yeah. Oh yeah, a different experience. It was so cool. I love it. And then you have your little table like in a bar, and you're right there. It's just so much fun.
I like the smaller experience, because I think, and you can probably say something about this, Drew. I think that the comedians relate more to the smaller vineyards with the people, as opposed to a large, where you don't really know who's really paying you attention and if they're pissed. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think it's been interesting performing at different size venues because it's almost like you learn how to, just like how like you get a new gaming system, you learn how to play the different system or whatever. And yeah, small rooms, one of the best parts is like you can relate to the people, you can connect to the audience, you see people whether in the front and the back. At some point you can connect with almost everyone in the audience in your show. In like theaters, you're not obviously going to be able to talk to every single person, but you still have to kind of give the illusion that you are interacting with every single person. So I've been doing more theaters lately, and every now and again, a trick that I learned how to do is like you look up, like basically where the lights are shining, and you point to someone as you're saying a joke, and at least 20 people think you're pointing to them when you're talking to them. And it's just a little way to connect to those people in the back. And then I've heard even bigger than that, arenas, you learn that you have to do delivery a little bit of your jokes, because when you're at a huge arena and you're telling a bit, you got to wait for the people in the back to hear it and laugh before you move on to your. You just learn a different kind of flow, and these are things that I never really would have thought about. But
I want to say something. I don't know if you're into this, but I had an experience that was amazing to me. Is after the show, now you know that person, you're connected with them, you're like in love with that person, right? Like, oh, he's one of my favorite comedians right now. That's the spirit of the time that you come out of it, right? More than probably when you walked in,
right? Is
when you're walking out of a smaller environment, and guess what? That comedian is out there to say hello and take pictures with the fan. I did that with Penn and Teller. Ah, my gosh, I was in heaven. I'm like,
oh, yeah. I like that.
I love that too. Meeting the people. I like it both as the comedian meeting the audience, but then I also love it as the when I'm going to a show and I get to meet the people and kind of get a cool story from it. You know,
it's funny that you said that, because I won't mention her name because she's a professional comedian, but I was really hurt that she did not come out to greet. And I'm really good friends with the manager at Helium and stuff. I don't look for fringe benefits, but to me, if I'm paying front row to see you, come out and speak at the end of the end of the thing. You know, she went in the back and started eating. So I went to the manager comes to me and said, "Hey, Andre, are you all right?" And I was like, I would think that the fact that it's wind chill outside, people came here, that she would at least came out and, "Hey, how you doing?" But it was just coming out of COVID too.
Yeah.
But you had a mask on. I mean, I still have the pictures. We had masks on. So I said, he went back there and got her. And the manager came out, which was her husband. And I was like, "Hey, I'm Andre the Beast. I would love, to shake her hand and tell her what a great show." She comes out and stuff. But to me, it was a little unprofessional. And by you being who you are, well-known celebrity, you did movies, why wouldn't you want to come out for a few minutes and do what you said, Jessica? Just greet the people, because and it's cold outside.
It becomes memorable. And now you're stepping up another level.
Right. And see, that's something I wouldn't want my fans to even think about. That was the experience that they had after paying a hefty fee to come and see my show. Yeah. But with that said, were you always funny growing up?
I've always been unintentionally funny. It's taken some work over the years to like be funny on purpose and tell jokes well and do well on stage. But I've heard whenever I've always been kind of a goof. I've always been like, I enjoy things. I'm light humored. I'll crack jokes about stuff like that. So before I did comedy, I started preaching when I was 16 years old. And my big thing when I preached was, which is too young. No one needs to hear a 16-year-old preach. But I disagree with that. Actually, plenty of 16-year-olds probably have good things they could say. But yeah, so I used to find ways to incorporate humor in my sermons because I found like that was a great way to relate to people and connect with them. So I've always told jokes. So yeah.
How much of your, this is a two-part question here. You started with the religion part of your journey, which is understandable. When did the shift change? And then how much of that do you still bring into your faith, into your comedy? And if you do, how is it received? How do you deliver the spiritual side of what you've grown up to be accustomed to into that audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great several questions. So, I started the reason I got into comedy, and it was probably when I was 23 or 24, was I just kind of looked around at my life. I was a youth pastor. I was living in Kentucky. I was in like a Christian bubble, and I really felt like, oh, I need to meet other people. I need to meet people outside of just everyone I met was like, everyone I knew was like older or younger versions of myself. So I was really like motivated to like, let me, get out there a little bit. And I tried open mic comedy for the first time, put me in a world that was completely different than I was used to. And I absolutely loved it. I loved connecting with the people. I loved the whole experience of doing stand up and meeting the people. And then that went from just being like a creative thing to like a side hustle. I was still doing ministry but occasionally getting paid to tell jokes. And then right about the time COVID was lightening up, about 2021, 2022, was when I really felt like my time in ministry was done, and I really wanted to pursue comedy and entertainment full time. So that was when I finally gave myself permission to do that. And it felt like the right time. And then, as far as my act goes, I do have a lot of jokes about being a former youth pastor. I do have a lot of jokes about like Christian culture, but it's very important to me that anyone who comes to my shows, like whether they're Christians or not, like likes what I do. I'm there to entertain. I'm there to have fun. Right. I'm not there to preach. And so often my biggest thing is I never want anyone at my shows to feel less than or devalued or anything like that. So like a lot of my humor is, you don't have to be a Christian to laugh, or you won't hear a lot about like preaching or anything like that. Sometimes I make fun of the church culture. Sometimes I, tell jokes from the perspective of someone in the church culture. So I've learned how to do it in a way that I feel like people, whether they go to church or not, will appreciate. But what ends up happening, this is where the faith kind of comes in, is after shows, oftentimes when people come, exactly what we were talking about, when you're talking and meeting your people after the shows, right. People feel very comfortable coming up, and maybe they've had a similar church experience where they want to talk about it with me. Maybe they're very anti-church, but like they want to talk about that a little bit, or right. anti-God a little. So those kind of conversations sometimes happen after the shows. And thankfully, like I have the training to go with that conversation wherever it goes with people. But you were talking about that headliner who didn't really say after the show, and maybe, who knows, maybe she had good reasons, but I've been fortunate to be touring a little bit with a headliner who, it's been one of my favorite things I've learned from her is how she will stay after the show and talk to people as long as it takes. Like she has, she has, pretty good following, but not a ton. But like when I performed with her in Lexington, which is where she's from, like everyone on earth there came, and we spent so long after the show because she was interacting with each person individually. And that to me was really impactful, because that's where you have those kind of conversations. That's when, and so that's occasionally there's been times where actually, I remember, in Cincinnati, after a show, this mother and her like adult daughter came by, and they're like, you mentioned being a pastor and your jokes, or being a former pastor. Could you pray with us? She's about to have like a big procedure. So like, right. I was like, all right, sure. Yeah. And so that was kind of a cool little thing I got to do, just to pray with this people.
So
right. Yeah. So it was a special moment.
Technically, you didn't leave the church. You got called into another part of the ministry. Basically, what it boils down to be, right? Yeah,
that really is what it feels like. I'll be honest, and I've said that before to friends before. Sometimes it feels like I'm able to do ministry better as a comedian than I was as a pastor. And I feel like a lot of times, for Christian wise, I'm like what I call like a second impression Christian. A lot of people I meet in comedy have a lot of problems with Christianity, have a lot of problems with the Christians they've met, have a lot of problems with what they've seen like on the news and stuff like that from Christians right now. And I'm able just to be like, yeah, that's not me. Like I'm just able to be something a little bit different,
What do people expect you to be? You brought that up, like, because you are, was a youth pastor. Well, still is. I'm not going to say was. You still minister, but you minister a different way. How do people really come at you without being offensive, but still being able to respect you as a human being, despite your religious preference?
Right. So I've learned as I've been touring and performing and traveling, and of course I talk about like a lot of my jokes start with me like, "Hey, I'm a Christian. Here's some opinions I have about like this like kind of stuff."
Right.
And what I've learned is as soon as you drop the phrase like "I'm a Christian," people will see that and either they will push away from you because they think it's a certain what it is, or they see that and they assume, oh, I'm just like that person. So, I'm kind of what's considered a progressive liberal Christian. So there's a lot of things that really, really conservative Christians believe that I don't. So what happens is sometimes people will come up to me and assume like, oh, you're this label and I don't like that about you. And then they get to know me and they're like, oh no, that's not the case. The opposite is true sometimes. I'll be, especially, being down here in the South, after shows, people will come up to me. And I do a very good job of not getting divisive or not being like, oh, I disagree with everything about you. I mean, they're over here wanting a picture. They're over here wanting to buy merch. They're over here just wanting to, something I did on my show was meaningful for them. So that's not the time to be like, also, I think you're wrong about this, but we'll have great conversations and stuff like that. And they'll walk away probably feeling like, wow, we are really connected. And I'm thinking to myself, I disagree with so much that person probably says,
like what is the difference between the terminology that you just use as to what you are? Is that what we consider like new school way of thinking? More information was given to you, and that the other way of the faith-based people, like you said, are they still stuck in not being able to understand the new information to evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I'll give the best answer because I don't want to be disrespectful to people and their beliefs and stuff like that. It comes down to your interpretation of the Bible as a Christian. It comes down to what you think it says, what you think it doesn't say, your understanding of the character of God based off of your convictions and how you're raised and what significant people in your life have taught you. And so for me, based off of what I've learned, I mean, I have 2 degrees in ministry and Bible. I have a master's in it based off of my experience and significant people in my life and how I've grown up. I subscribe to more what's called liberation theology, which really focuses on like the freedom we find in Jesus and how that frees us to be the best version of ourselves and stuff like that. I would critique other people that are maybe more conservative, more like, I'm going to sound like a jerk, but like more closed-minded with their Christianity. Like they focus more on the guilt and the shame and you need to be this way. Otherwise you're, and these kinds of people belong and these kinds of people don't.
The negative.
And that's very different than, the negative judgmental stuff. And we see that, we see that in the world, especially when you look at people like the Christian faith. And, I'm not here to preach for or against them, but that's not me. That's not what I believe. And I've found, especially in comedy, you guys know, in entertainment, you interact with a lot of people that have been going through a lot of stuff, a lot of people that are broken or hurt or dealing with stuff. And so much of it, at least the ones I talk to, and probably because they hear my act and they feel comfortable talking to me about it, it comes back to something happening around faith or growing up or people in church that have said or done something to them. And I like to be like a different, I'm not going to preach to them, but also like I'm going to show them that like not everyone in that group is like that,
Provide another experience without you telling them. You're just giving them that experience without you saying it. I have a question for you. Are your shows, the topics, how do you choose the topics? Is it mainly based on this experience, which is vast for you?
Yeah. No, so when I choose, I do a lot of jokes about myself and my own experience. So yeah, part of it is going to come, youth ministry and being a Christian will come up. And, but I also I have a lot of strong opinions about food. Food comes up a lot in my shows. I'm a geek. Food. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I have to stop myself sometimes when I'm putting together a set. I was like, we don't need to talk about this much food for this long of time, I'm kind of a geek too. I have jokes about, I was a lead guitar player in a Christian punk rock band in high school. So that lends itself to jokes. I run a Fast and Furious themed movie rewatch podcast, so absolutely we talk about Fast and Furious at some point. I feel like it would be a sin if I didn't, you know? I feel like Vin Diesel himself would come and beat me up if I didn't. I do a lot of self-deprecating stuff. When I first started comedy, one of the best ways comedy helped me was, you know, I've had to deal with a lot of self-esteem issues and a lot of stuff like that growing up. And so one of the formats I used to do to write jokes and make material was I'd pick one thing that I was self-conscious about, whether it was like my high voice or being hairy or like overweight or I was born without a sense of smell. That was actually the first thing that I ever wrote a joke about or a routine about. So I'd pick one thing and I'd make a material about it. And so a lot of my jokes are like self-deprecating. I'm a single, unmarried guy, so obviously I have opinions about dating and women and stuff like that. So, you know, I feel like my act is really just based off of my own experience.
Right.
I have gotten to the point now where I do try to. I feel like when you first start comedy, your main goal is to like, you just want to make people laugh. You just want to get the punchlines that gets the laughter. But the more you do it and the longer time you have on stage with people, sometimes you really want to like leave them with something a little bit more substantial. So for me, I always just like to remind people like, we're having fun. There's so much about life that needs to be enjoyed and that kind of stuff. So
when did before we wrap up, when did the change happen for you? Because a lot of times
change?
The change from really being engulfed in the word and teaching the youth. When did it change for you? Because that's tremendous to go from there. Like, what were you going through? You know, both emotionally, spiritually, the whole 9 yards, that at the end of the day, you thought you realized comedy was a way to deliver the complete package for you.
Yeah. So I was, while COVID was lightening up and still a lot of our job was virtual, I was starting to consider the idea of getting a different job within the church ministry. I'd always decided at this point, I'd worked at the same church for 6 years. And my thought process was, I don't want to go be a youth pastor at a different church. But maybe I want to be a campus pastor. Maybe I want to work at a conference. Maybe I want to, and at this point I had the experience and education. So I was kind of applying for all my quote unquote dream jobs in ministry just to see, I was open to the idea of potentially moving. I think I had that spirit of like transitions coming, you know? And at the same time, because most of my job was remote and things were opening up, I was getting the itch to get out and do some more comedy. So I planned about a week tour. I did the World Series of Comedy. I hit a few different random rooms. I remember I did a show from the bed of a pickup truck at a dog park in Chicago. And I was doing all these little shows. And at the same time, I was getting callbacks from the jobs I had applied for, giving me polite no thank you. So doors were kind of closing on things I was like, oh, that's what I'd really want. And then I was also getting back into comedy and thinking to myself, I've missed this so much. And then I remember on a phone call with my mom, I was actually like, I think no matter what job I get, I would rather be doing stand-up comedy. And then I, as luck would have it, one of the shows I performed on, the headliner that night was a friend from Nashville. And he made some kind of statement leading into his joke where he's just like, yeah, I'm 35 and a full-time comedian. And then it hit me kind of like a Holy Spirit moment where I was like, oh, in a year when I'm 35, I'm going to be a full-time comedian. And then I took a year to kind of prepare and kind of pray about it, but also like test the waters a little bit. And there was so much confirmation in the conversations with people and in where I saw my passion, where I was getting excited, things I was getting excited about doing. And it never was like because a lot of people, when they leave ministry, they have like a burnout moment or like they're done or they get so angry. I loved my job and I was happy for it, but it did feel like the end of a good TV show where like it ends just right. You're like, okay, it's time for us to, like, it felt like I was just in a different season of life and it took me a while, but like I finally gave myself permission to be like, and that's okay. You know, you don't have to be doing the same thing with your life forever, you know?
I'm glad that you heard that and you paid attention to it. You know, sometimes I ignored it for so long. You know what I'm saying? So this is beautiful.
Ignored it for so long.
Oh, because of beliefs that you have, that you grow up with, you know, you think that you have to do it this certain way because that's what's the expectation. That's what you were thought to do. You need to be grateful and you keep pushing it until your soul comes to a point where like something has got to give.
How hard was it for you then?
Horrible?
No, how hard was it for you to change that way of thinking?
Well, I wasn't sure how to do it. So it started with me begging God to help me find a way. That was the first step. Because I was like in a point that I couldn't do it anymore and I didn't know how and what I would do. So I begged for help and he started showing me the way and everything started changing my life.
Yeah.
Drew, I'm going to ask this question to you real quick before you say something. What was the scariest moment for you to go out on your own? Because me personally, I don't think I can get in front of people and tell a joke. I think I'm funny, but I do that funny behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? Like, what did you go like? How difficult was it for you to really tackle this new venture for you? You know, you're funny when you're at home. You're funny with your friends, but now you're getting ready to make this into 35 years old, and my job is a professional comedian now. Are you really funny?
Yeah.
How did it go by doing it, and what was the scariest moment for you?
So yeah, I hear you completely because it is definitely I also kind of on the side I consult comedians too. So talking to them about the difference between like it being a side hustle and a hobby versus it being a profession. There's 100% a shift that you have to go into. For me, it was kind of when I was first coming to the conclusion that this is what I was wanting to do. I was afraid for a lot. But I realized all the fears I had were not good enough to stop me from doing it. One biggest fear for me was like, what are people going to think? You know, second biggest fear was not so much the future, but the giving up what was in front of me, you know, telling the kids I was leaving this 15-year career that everything up until, you know, I wanted to be a youth pastor when I was in 8th grade. And so I was like kind of living this whole thing that I've been doing. I was like, oh, I'm moving away from that. But what also kind of started from the minute I started doing comedy was the desire in the back of my head. Like, I think I eventually want to do this full time. I love all this entertainment stuff and I want to be part of it. So years of me kind of pushing that away is like, yeah, but I'm not actually going to do that ever. It's just going to be a side hustle. It's just going to be a hobby. And there was a point where I really had to, where I realized like, wow, this is the direction I want to go. And just like you were saying, there's a lot of fear of like, I don't want to look back and be like, I never did that, you know? And so to me, the scariest moment was right when I realized this is the direction my life's going. I think the scariest moment was when I drove back home after that tour and with a handful of people told them, I think in a year I'm going to ditch my day job and become a comedian. And it's like, how do you even do that? You know, like, so like, what do you even, I wrote a plan and I can't say it solved all the issues. Right. There's a lot hadn't account for, but I feel like it helped. So for anyone who ever does it, I tell them like, you know what, give yourself some time, whether it's a year, 6 months or however much you need, and like start planning it out. And that will help you. There will be plenty you don't plan for that has to happen, but like at least, and then the second thing was I showed myself grace, especially for my first year of being a full-time comedian, because I remembered that like, oh, I'd been doing youth ministry for 15 plus years. Obviously I had a system down, but like my first year as a full-time youth pastor was not as solid as my 15th year. And so my first year as a full-time entertainer, I probably made a mistake every single day, you know, and I just had to tell myself, well, okay, don't do that. Got it. You know, so
now that you're looking back on your life, before we wrap up, now that you're looking back on this journey, what has been some of the key mistakes that you made along that journey that you might have taken for granted at that particular point?
I think the thing about comedy is you learn that, and this is going to sound really negative, and I don't mean it as negative as it's going to sound, but I think it's important for people to know when they get into show business, not everyone on your side is on your side. Oftentimes we're going, you know, the same path, the same trajectory, but comedy is by nature, a very selfish business. We're always looking, and not just comedy, but entertainment. We're always looking out for ourselves, and when our things align, then we're on the same teams. But sooner or later, you and maybe your 4 best friends might be going for the same opportunity, and only one of you is going to get it, and it's going to be awkward. It's going to be weird. So going into comedy, I treated all the community and relationships much like what I dealt with when I was a pastor with the church and stuff like that. And I think I've learned since then, and this sounds mean, but I promise it's healthier than it sounds. I've learned to be a little bit more colder. I like to say like my relationships were like 60% friends now, and I'm cool with that. Like you don't need to be best, share everything with everyone in your, and having a life outside of comedy, having a life outside of entertainment is so important, because when things are tough, or when you have your seasons where maybe you don't have as many bookings, but you're working to get more bookings, and you have those months maybe that it's just going a little slower and it's not exactly as much fun, and maybe you're worried about like, oh my gosh, is my career over or whatever. It's really important to have a social life outside of that. It's really important to have your family outside of that, or whatever that thing is for you that like isn't your job. And we get that for any other job usually, because otherwise you're being called a workaholic. But suddenly when entertainment comes in, there's something we tell ourselves, and it's true a little bit, but you just got to be careful with it. That, your job as an entertainer has to come first, because otherwise someone who wants it more is going to get the opportunity that you're trying to get. So you always have to stop at nothing. And that was how I went into comedy when it became a full-time thing, is like, this is my first priority. It's going to trump everything I do all the time, because I'm trying to build a career. And I think that was very mentally not healthy. So I think now I have a much more, calmer view of the, more real view of the people I interact with, but it's also a more real view of like how I can work and be productive, but also not be obsessive about it.
I love that.
You got any questions before we wrap up?
That's a beautiful balance. I love that. I did have a question, and it's basically something that always comes up, and this is how I choose my comedy. And this is a personal preference. I'm not saying about anybody here, but everybody has a personal preference. Every time I go to a comedy show, stand-up comedy or whatever it is, I always choose clean. I don't need to have all of that stuff. So what do you have a take that you would like to share with us on that, as far as, because there's a lot of both sides out there?
Yeah. So, I'll tell you my personal preference, cause I do get that. I love that, because as someone who produces clean comedy shows, we love people that want to come to clean shows. I love that. I don't work exclusively clean though. Did I lose you guys there? Oh, you're still there. Okay, cool. I produce clean shows and I create clean shows, but I also work anywhere, whether it's clean or not. For me, the biggest thing is, non-offensive comedy. I think one of my friends, he's another comedian, he calls it kind comedy. I know I work like this for my shows, where like when I perform, like I never want anyone in the audience to feel less than because of a joke I said. I never want them to leave feeling like they're less of a person in any kind of way. They're devalued because of the joke. Now, if they misinterpret a joke and they get offended, maybe that's not on me. But like when you write jokes, when you think about what's the funny part of this actual joke, I never want the answer to that to be because this kind of person is less than other kinds of people. So when I look for comedy, when I listen to comedy, I'll laugh at crass stuff. I'll laugh at cussing. I'll laugh at clean comedy. I'll laugh at dark jokes. I kind of find all in their own ways they're funny. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in, honestly. But what really bothers me is when the premise of the joke is that person or those people are less than. That kind of grates on me a little bit because of my own personal convictions. Like we're living in a world right now where that message in a not funny way is being shared everywhere. And so as comedians in our entertainment, in our art, we could be better than that. So that I guess that's my answer to that one.
So Drew, how can the viewers reach out to you? What you got going on right now? And then how can the viewers reach out and support you?
Yeah, so I'm in October, which is this show coming out? Is our episode here coming out relatively soon, or
ASAP?
Oh wow, it's coming out like soon. Okay, got it. So I'm really excited about October because I'm headlining a couple venues that I'm real excited about. It's Sullivan, Indiana. There's a theater there, and I don't know how close that is to your listeners, but you being Indianapolis, I feel like maybe someone's around there. Yeah. And I'm doing a big show there on October 18th, and it's gonna be great. And then people closer to me. I got a big show in Clarksville at Joker's Comedy House in Clarksville, Tennessee on October 24th. And those are like the ones that I'm geared, I'm a newer headliner, right? So right. I have the act but what I don't have yet is the following. So that's why any chance I get, I tell people, hey, come to this show. Cause I need to get butts and seats. My website is drewdaviscomedy.com. and all of my social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. It's at Drew Davis Comedy. I have a podcast called The Quarter Mile Podcast where we review action movies every week. And that's the way people can find me, is just type in Drew Davis Comedy and I'll pop up. And yeah, I'd love to see people at shows. And I'd love to meet you after the show and hang out. And I'm so grateful to be on this podcast with you guys. Thank you so much for reaching out and letting me come chat and hang.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Before we wrap up, I got to close out with the one, the only podcast that's taking the world by storm, Jessica Javens Talk. What do you got to leave us with?
Well, first of all, before and after, right? Us talking to Drew here, it's amazing to see the mindsets, the energy, and how his transition happened. It's such a beautiful flow, and it's an inspiration for everybody who wants to actually change careers. Yeah. And that's where I was stuck for a long time, older than you. I did that change in my 40s. So it took me all that time to kind of like get to the core of what resonated with me as an adult now, you know? So I'm just very happy to be here and to meet amazing people who are creating a life that they love, because my podcast is about that, about loving your life and taking the step actions to get there. And for that, you need clarity. You need to be in tune with who you are. You need to be authentic. So we talk about all of that in the podcast, because those are essential human things that we need. And we need that support system. Like Drew said, we need to have, other than work, you need to have these other things. As humans, we need that combination. And that's what brings the balance and the strength that we need to really enjoy each day at a time.
Wow. Thank you so much. How can the viewers follow you on your podcast? I'm
Jessica Javens Talk. I'm on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. My website is jessicajavens.com, and Jessica Javens Talk. You can find me on all social media platforms.
Before I ask both of you guys this question, and it relates back to what you said, Drew, about the importance now of creating followers and creating that social media community. How important, how difficult, I ask both of you guys, because this will be the last question. How difficult was it for you guys to actually build your brand? How much of influence is the social media to making sure that your brand elevates? Because it's not an easy thing to navigate in today's society with that social media and all kind of new things popping up. Let's start with you, Drew, and then we'll go with Jessica with that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is incredibly important. Usually at some point at the ends of my shows, I'll remind audiences to follow myself or the other comedians or whatever. And what I tell them is absolutely true, is back in the day, you know, comedy clubs and places that we want to work at and get work from, you know, the biggest question they're asking would be, is this person funny? Right. Which is a good question for a comedy club to ask. But now the biggest question they ask is how many followers they have, how many butts can they get into seats? And that's so much more common. So we always remind people, like, every +1 follow helps us be more bookable, you know? And so it's so important. And when I work with comedians, I do have to have that conversation with, like, you have to build your online presence. You have to get an Instagram. You have to have a YouTube. You have to try to build those followings, because that'll help you get bigger gigs later. But something that helped me out a lot, and this has just been in the past year, I've always stressed out about the algorithm and getting viral reels and trying to get tons of followers. And it's been very stressful. And sometimes my posts get lots of views and sometimes they get no views. And it's, you know, it's very stressful. But someone reminded me that, like, you should stop asking the question, what's good for the algorithm? And you should start asking the question, what's good for your audience? And you should really, everything that you post, you should be thinking about your people more than you're thinking about, will this be successful? Will this work out? You still will make educated, you'll still see what does well and do more of that. But it really always goes back to the people that are following you. And even if you got a reel that only has 200 views, that means 200 eyes or pairs of eyes have.
Could you say that again? I tell people it's not the algorithm, that's the number. You'd be surprised, even if it's only 5 or 10 people, that's 5 or 10 people that will follow you. Yeah. And those 5 or 10 people will be loyal fans. Then you're trying to search for the million number. Jessica, what about you?
Yes, everything that Drew said is on the spot. And I would say consistency and resilience, because sometimes, especially in this era, of instant gratification. We want quick results. And nothing that is worth it comes through quick results. It takes time, consistency, and you need to be fresh. So for instance, I post practically every day, and some people agree with that. Some people disagree. I know what my mission is. I have that clarity, but I'm always open to learning. But you also have to have a filter, because there's all kinds of opinions out there and things are constantly changing. So you do need to be informed. But at the same time, something that I posted maybe a year ago is not as relevant as it is right now. People are into something else. So you need to have that fresh thing. I think that whenever I see a page, either a channel on YouTube, a podcast, if I see the person hasn't posted for a year, I'm like, is this person really engaged? Is this person really into what's going on? I'm like, If I see the person has been consistent, I'm like, ooh, this person is serious. Do you know what I'm saying? So it changes that. This is
Are
at
they
least
serious, or let me rephrase it. Just because they're doing that, does that mean that they're serious, or does that mean that they're addicted to the social media lifestyle, which means that they have to be relevant, in the way that they become relevant is to always be on their social media. So you got to know the difference. Just because somebody's clicking every day doesn't mean that they're engaged. It just means they may be addicted, just like people addicted to porn. They're addicted to the social media.
There's definitely that addiction and sensation of when things are going well, and you're like love feeling how popular and good you feel when you have a good reel that's getting views and stuff like that. And then there's always like the next one you post that's not getting as much, and then there's that feeling, and that's definitely you gotta keep in mind your mental health when you're an influencer and entertainer, because at the end of the day, it's just social media. Like, go out and touch grass. Like, go out and have a conversation with someone.
Drew, leave us with a little bit of comedy, but inspirational at the same time. Go for it.
Comedy that's inspirational at the same time. Okay, everyone here needs to chill out, because none of us are that big of a deal. We are all pretty remarkably average, and that's beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting, say it with me, episode of the Andre the Beast
Creighton.